The person that I'm chatting with today is someone that I caught up with over the summer. I was at a golf tournament. I was hanging out with one of my friends, and this guy came up to us and started talking as if he knew me really well and knew my friend. And I looked at him and I was confused. Obviously, even in a place like Winnipeg, the golf industry is big enough that maybe he was someone that I'd met in the industry and just didn't recognize. But the way he was talking to me, it seemed like we had history. So I racked my brain and we have to get on with the tournament, and I don't think much of it. I turn over to my friend and I was like, "Who was that?" And my friend like does a double take to me and says, "Oh, that's like, dude, that's Ryan Mackenzie." Now I've known Ryan for a long time, basically since I got into the industry. He worked at a golf course that didn't have a driving range. So when he wanted to practice, he would come to the course that I was working at, and we hit it off and had maintained a relationship until he moved out west. Now, I didn't recognize him at all because when I knew Ryan, but way back in the day, he was a whole lot heavier. Which I think he said at his heaviest, he was somewhere around 300 pounds. And the guy that I talked to that day during the summer was probably a trim 225, 230. Like, looked incredible. So we chatted a tad bit afterwards, and I didn't think too much of it. And then I posted my interview with Travis, and he reached out to me. We talked on the phone, and he got to telling me his story over the last number of years of personal development, of growth, and just this mindset of he wanted to share his story with everybody else. And naturally, I said, "Hey, I love it. Let's get this out into people in a form that maybe I can help facilitate." So that's what this is. RMac is an incredible human being. He's extremely authentic, and I think his story has a ton of value for anybody who happens to listen to this. So here is a conversation with Ryan Mackenzie. I am now joined by Ryan Mackenzie, who I only know as RMac. And I was just in the intro, I tell you the story. I'll tell the story of the fact that at the Assiniboine Pro-Am that we went to this summer, I just did not recognize you. And my two questions were, how often does that happen? And two, what has this process of the last number of years been like for you?
First of all, Maddie, thank you. Honored to be here. Love what you're doing. Like I said, you're killing it. I really, really, really enjoy the conversations you're having with great people, and thank you for having me on. Yes, that is something that happens quite often, especially because for those of you who don't know who I am, I lived away from Manitoba for 4 years, and on that journey, I went through a lifestyle transformation. And I moved back home to Winnipeg in end of August 2019. So since being back this last year and year and a half now, yes, that's happened quite often. I'll walk around, especially with people, because we know each other through the golf industry from going way back to 2011. People, especially in the industry, I'll say hi to somebody or they won't recognize me, and that'll happen. It just happens in small town Winnipeg. So I do know a larger contingent of people from my time in the industry. Golf industry is heavily people related, and yes, that happens quite often.
And what emotions do you feel when that happens?
Yeah, you know what? Usually, Matt, when I reintroduce myself to people that I knew from before, they go like, "Holy smokes, didn't recognize you." So there's definitely been the challenge for sure. Is there's
Mm-hmm.
some people that'll say maybe things that are a little offside, in my opinion, like, "Oh, like where did the other half of you go?" Right? And then people, I think, sometimes don't realize that comments like that actually affect a guy, right? That comment, maybe you know, to me, it's like, whoa, like I wouldn't say that to somebody else, right? In terms of like, it's kind of an insult, like where did the other half of you go? Because that to me is like what was wrong with me when I was a bigger guy, right? And that also allows me to, with people, I've always felt I've had a good read on people. And I feel like when I was 330 pounds to now today, people definitely treated me different than the now people that I knew before to now. And it's those people that have always been consistent with how they treated me. And Matt, you are one of those guys who's always treated me the same with respect and kindness, like treating others how you want yourself to be treated. Those are the people that I can go, yes, those people are the ones I want in my circle today. And that's so important because the previous version of RMac, as you call me, I was always about I was so caught up in trying to be liked. But there's such a difference between being liked and respected, right? I was always trying to be everyone's friend and didn't know how to set boundaries, didn't know how to use the word no. Like no to me back then, it was foreign. There's a power in saying no. And so that's to answer your question. It's that was a little bit long-winded, but I think it's important that to becoming who I am today, it's really allowed me to surround myself with people that bring me up and don't and not to tear me down or are maybe smaller minded or have gossip or toxicity or see the black dot on a white piece of paper, like I call them energy vampires. So it's really important to to surround yourself with great people, and that's so big in anything.
Yeah, I know, like because we didn't have a lot of time to talk in that first interaction, and I was just struck with like holy shit, he looks incredible, and you just carried yourself differently, and so it was. I felt bad because obviously like you approached me. I was like, oh hey Maddie, how's it going? And then I'm there like this guy looks familiar, but not. So
Didn't put two and two together.
no, and so you alluded to you went out west, kind of a fresh slate in a lot of ways, and that's been a kind of a theme that's arisen from different guests I've had and chatted with. What were some of the practical things that you did when you moved out west that led to this lifestyle shift?
Great question. And I really appreciate you saying about how I carry myself. I definitely know that about me with my heightened self-awareness and uh, who I've become moving out west. It's really helped me change physically, spiritually, in my heart. I'm still that same nice guy that everyone knew before, but I really did I did a ton of growing up out west and was very fortunate and lucky enough to meet some phenomenal human beings. One guy in particular, his name is Kevin McDonald. He's a life coach. He's been a father figure to me, near and dear to my heart. He's a very big influencer in the club industry as well. So he really helped me transform in terms of my mental state. And then I also went through a lifestyle program called Precision Nutrition Coaching in 2018. So 2018 was a really monumental year for me, physically and mentally. And to answer your question, I would say the fact that I even moved out west at the end of 2016, having that courage is so important to anybody, because Winnipeg, I find, and I think anywhere you go, and it doesn't matter if it's Winnipeg or not, I find there's a lot of Winnipeggers that like to complain about things that they can't control, like the weather, for instance, when it gets cold, when it snows, bad drivers. I just find you'll get that everywhere. And now even with COVID-19, the election, all this crap that you can't control, I find lots of people focus on that. So by moving out west, by getting out of my proverbial comfort zone, that really allowed the door opening for the magic to really happen. And I think that, again, I'm not coming on here to tell people what they should or should not do. I'm just voicing what I did, and what works for me might not work for somebody else. But I can wholeheartedly say, Maddie, that by getting out of my comfort zone and trying things that seem scary or difficult, because they were, really had that aha moment for me. And it's really allowed me to figure out who is Ryan Mackenzie. And that as you said in your latest video about the why and finding your why, like I really have found my why especially this 2020 has been a time for lots of people with all this hardship to kind of pump the brakes and do some self-reflection and have that heightened sense of self-awareness. And that to me has been really important important as we go. So finding out my why.
And in our little bit of a chat on the phone, and then just before we went on recording, you stated the fact that, in fact, you don't like social media, and I completely understand that that sentiment. But you've decided to get back onto social media, and you've tried to project a platform of positivity, of going out and doing things. What was the impetus to get back onto social media?
Oh, great question. So what happened? I was contemplating it for a while, and I need to just go on a little backstory if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
It's a very important message, and I want to come out on your platform here and just say it like we were saying before we got on to the air here. I got into the golf industry formerly I was a PGA of Canada golf professional, right? And I kind of got into the industry for the wrong reasons. We had talked about growing up playing junior golf. And for me, and I can say this now, I actually am a good golfer. I have this thing, it's called imposter syndrome. I used to think that I wasn't as good as this person or these people. And I was the kid that played MJTs and shoot 83 or 84, and then felt like I was getting made fun of by the guys who were shooting, shooting 75, right? And then even you think about that, like none of these guys that were laughing at me then are on tour, exception Aaron Cockrell, who I grew up with, right? We have a mutual best friend named Kyle Kelpin. So, but AC and a guy like Travis Fredberg, who was just on your thing, those are two the kindest, most genuine hearted people, and they're doing golf for the right reasons, for their reasons, because they know their why. For me, I became a golf pro because I thought I'm going to show all these guys that I can be something, right? And I got good enough at 18 to get my pro card and turn pro. But there's a difference between being a golf professional and a professional golfer, right? And all this to say, it was so many great life lessons because I was surrounded with people with tons of egos. Golf industry is littered with it. There's lots of great people, lots of people with egos. You learn things, right? And I can say now that I'm still going through that burnout because golf was a passion of mine. I really found out that as I got higher and higher, and as I got west and started doing these things, I was going, I hope Winnipeg and all those people that made fun of me for being fat or being crappy at golf, hope they're seeing what I'm doing now and seeing that I'm capable of anything. But that's not the right reasons, right? You have to know your why. It's not about external validation. It's about internal drive. And so when I got to the top, most recently, before I moved home from Vancouver, I was hired on as the senior associate golf professional at the Vancouver Golf Club, with full of them having me take over as the head golf professional at the end of this year, 2020. So I had made it to the proverbial top almost. And it hit me like a ton of bricks last July. I'm out west. I have this dream job. I'd always thought it was great. I was working 5 days a week, 2 days off, got to play golf with members, got to actually be a golf professional, right? Like servicing members and playing golf with them and all the things that we all want. Life was great, but it really wasn't great, Maddie. It was like, I felt alone. I felt isolated out there. All of my friends and family are here in Winnipeg, and I wasn't happy. And so it was some hard decisions to make last July. And you know what? The Vancouver Golf Club is a friend of mine for life. The way they handled me, my exit, throwing me a going away party, telling me, thanking me for the impact I made in 6 months there. Eternally grateful. To that, I'm still feeling that burnout today. Like, I played 15 runs of golf in 2020, and that's not my passion. My passion has become running since 2018. I've been a runner. I've accomplished some really cool things in running. Run quite a few half marathons now in different places: Vancouver, Vietnam, here in Winnipeg, Calgary. But that's not why I run. I run because I love running. It wouldn't matter to me if I win or lose in a race, because the best thing I love about running is that you go to war every day with yourself. It's a battle of self every single time you put the shoes on. And I think that's the beauty of it. So if you ask a guy like Aaron Cockrell why he plays golf, I think it's the same reasons. He's going to war with himself every day. Or, all these people that you talk to with basketball, right? They know their why too. they're not about maybe they have the goals in NBA championship or making the NBA, but at the end of the day, whether they do or they don't, they're doing it because they love them. It's not about the outside external validation, and it's about internal drive. And that's what I've learned about myself. And so now to the social media thing, I didn't like social media. I got away from it. I deleted all my social media accounts in February of this year, especially when COVID hit, seeing people fighting about toilet paper, all this negativity and this BS. I'm like, man, I'm done. So I deleted everything, and then it hit me at the end of August. I had a friend, I had a friend of mine, dear friend named Nick Holben. He was like, "Dude, you've always had this aura about you with people. Like people are drawn to you. And not everyone has that. That's something you have." And I realized, yeah, he's not wrong. And just based off some people that I really love, like a guy like David Goggins or Cameron Haynes. These are guys who they have a social media presence, and they use the platform to share their truths and do what they love to do. So for those guys, it's running and getting at it, and that's something I love to do as well. So it's been really cool. And then obviously, I'm sure you're going to ask about it, but the coach's challenge, is that maybe the next question?
That was something that I was gonna lead into, because you getting after it and running was made me think. I'm like, well, I am an able-bodied young man. I should be able to do some running too. So I set myself a goal of 7 days in a row, because I knew that I could do at least seven. It was a manageable goal that no matter what the weather was for 7 days, I was going to run at least a mile, because I've never liked distance running, and I wanted to do something that I knew that I necessarily didn't like, but would be good for me. So that was what I started it.
I love it. And you had a conversation the next day, you tagged me in it, and it hit me. I went to bed that night. And every sort of side, I think for everyone who has a passion for one thing, they can relate, and you can relate to this when you go to bed at night and then something eats at you and you just can't sleep because you're brewing something in your creative mind. I was in bed that night and I'm going, oh man, I've been doing these runs and talking my truths and encouraging people. And then what you just said, and I've had people reach, and the thing is on a side, people have been reaching out to me for about 2 months saying, I'm not a runner, but what you're saying is ringing true to me. And man, thank you for doing what you're saying, and doing what you're doing, because it's helped me today. And I'm going, okay, that's exactly why I do it. And then you came out with that, and I thought, the coach's challenge, and it hit me. I'm going to nominate 3 people or people every day for 7 days while in a row while I go on my runs, and just try to spread positivity in an environment of social media that can be heavily negative, right? There's lots of COVID-19 stuff. There's a lot more so the election, just stuff that we can't control that is so heavily talked about. And I'm thinking, what are the things we can control in this pandemic? Well, we're still able to put the shoes on and go for a walk or go for a run or go and do some stretching or some yoga or some type of movement. And that to me is what it's about. So I thought, I'm going to do this for 7 days, inspired by you, calling it the coach's challenge. And I'm going to tag people every day in hopes that they're going to get behind it. And I learned some stuff through this last 10 days of it. Was like day 3 and 4 were a little bit, the demons kind of mentally came knocking. I would get out of bed at 5, and it was like, people haven't really been taking to it as I'd hoped, but that's why it's a 7-day thing. And that's why sticking to the process is so much more important than the outcome. So being process focused versus outcome focused. And I'm glad I stuck to it. I did it because I did it for me. And today we're 11 days in and I'm past the 7-day challenge. It's spreading. I've been on this cell phone purge where I leave my phone at home through the day, and then I come home, and I came home an hour ago. I opened up Instagram. There's like 10 plus messages, and it's like people getting at it, doing moving, tagging people. I'm like, that is what it's all about. It's not about what you can or can't do. It's about controlling what you can. If you're not a runner, no problem. Like go on a walk. And like, that gets me excited, because when I was the 330-pound version of Ryan Mackenzie, all I wanted was for some person to be like, some person who was doing the thing to be like, hey man, I see you wanting to improve. I want to be there for you. And so I'm going to say this on your platform here, Maddie. Anyone who wants to follow me or is following me at Ryan Max on Instagram, have the courage to reach out if you want to, and be like, I could use a running buddy, or I could use a walking buddy, or someone to talk to. I will be there at the drop of a pin for anybody that asks that. And I know it's COVID, so maybe if the restrictions lift or you're comfortable, I'll wear a mask. But I just want to be there for other people. Like I mentioned, Kevin McDonald, my the life coach who I met in 2018, who helped me. He was that proverbial hand that came down and said, I see a world in you, Ryan Mackenzie, help you to realize that. Well, he certainly did, and now I want to be that help of inspiring change to others. And whether it's, like I said, running, walking, basketball, you name it, I want to be there to chat and physically be there for the person too. So that's ultimately so important to me, is knowing your why and knowing who I am. It's taken me, I turned 28 in 2 weeks. It's taken me 27 and a half years to really embody that, understand that, and to know who is Ryan Mackenzie. And that's powerful, because I say a lot of people could go their whole lives without actually knowing, and they're chasing that external validation that's not really there. Like, we all know people who work 80 hours a week, and you look at them going like, why? And they seem miserable or whatever, but it's because they think that if they keep doing that insane work, they're going to get to that promotion or that top of that pyramid or whatever, only to realize that when you get there, it's momentary gratification with a lot more suffering. And so when you know your why, all that's out the window, because it goes from external validation to self-validation and self-drive. And that's the magic in that.
And you mentioned about being able to reach out to you, and like that's what is great about social media. And I know that I've started the process of kind of curating my social media of who I follow or which posts I see. But it was the fact that I had Travis on to chat, and you happened to see that, and then you had the courage to reach out to me, so I'm extremely grateful for that fact that you took that step to bridge that gap.
Well, thank you, brother. Yes, that's exactly right. You have to be able to self-advocate at certain periods of time. Truthfully, I had no idea you were on social media. I also am selective of who I do follow. And then I see that Travis shared this thing, and I was like, that's Matt Dick. Holy smokes. And I click on it. I'm like, wow, I was mind blown. I'm like, you are so good at speaking with people. You have this gift, this talent that I had no idea of, because other than that brief quick exchange at Assiniboine in August, I hadn't seen you in 5 years, right? So I was just so like, I was like, yes, I have to reach out now. I'm in this position to now share my story in hopes to help resonate with other people and help them. And you're someone that's doing that. And that's another thing that I want to say is, I am by no means telling anyone on here that they should or shouldn't do anything. It's all about sharing my truths and my experiences, and hopefully that a part of the message that we're talking about today maybe will hit somebody and it'll resonate with them, and then it'll help them shift their thinking maybe a little differently, and that'll inspire them to make the change. Because you can ultimately, something else I've learned is, when people ask you for help, or you get into relationships and you want to help change other people, and you see things that maybe they can improve on, it's not up to you, it's up to the person. You have to want to make the changes ultimately. And I'm more of an empath, where I've always tried to make other people's problems, who I care about near and dearly, my own problems. And that's another thing that it'll just drive you up the wall, or it'll tear apart relationships or what have you. Is you have to just focus on yourself and be authentically who you are. And hopefully, like I said, some of the message or something that I'm doing will help inspire, motivate someone else to change, just like you're doing with your conversations. I think you are just, it's a breath of fresh air, my friend, to have you do what you're doing.
I appreciate that. And in closing, kind of a last piece here. Do you have any mottos or mantras that you kind of have resonated with you, that you, not necessarily you repeat to yourself on a day-to-day basis, but that remind you to orient yourself in the path that you're taking?
Yes. I heard a great quote recently, actually, that again hit me upside the head, and it was so good that I want to share it right now. It is that comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm.
So when you're living a life full of, well, I was living my life full of comparing myself to other people before and worrying about what other people think, because I think we're all guilty of that, worrying about what others are thinking. I was really just, the more I achieved, as I was talking about earlier, the more I felt just empty. And you know what? That would be it. Is comparison is the thief of joy. You really, that's a big one to me. And ultimately, we always have a choice. At the end of the day, if we have a choice to go to work, we have a choice to work out, we have a choice to eat fast food or eat maybe a whole food, like a vegetable or a piece of fruit, or the choice is always ours, and it's what we decide to do with it that makes all the difference. So my last thing I will say to anybody is, whatever path you're on, do it for you. Don't worry about what mom and dad or outside sources or friends are telling you should or shouldn't do. Because I was telling you about the book I read most recently by Tim Grover, who you know as a basketball guy, Michael Jordan's personal trainer.
Yeah.
He said this quote in the book that I wanted to share as well: is, we are all born relentless, taught to relent. So what that means is, like, you think about a baby. When we're babies, we're screaming when we're hungry, when we have to go poo, when we want to nap, when we're teething. We're always just being loud. And we have parents and outside sources saying, don't do that, don't do this, you should be more like your brother, you should be more like that person. And then you kind of get lost in there. And I just want to say to everybody, do what you think, do what you feel inside is to do, and show up every day, even when it's tough or hard to do. Showing up every day consistently over time makes all of the difference. Whether you believe me or not, I guarantee you'll see that. So showing up is so important.
I don't think I could wrap it up any better. Thanks again, RMac, and I look forward to whatever the next year holds for what you've been able to tell your story, and just seeing your journey from all those years back at the Meadows driving range.
Yeah, brother. And thank you so much. Grateful that you had me on tonight and that we were able to have this great conversation. And keep doing what you're doing, man. Love your work, love following you, and grateful to call you a friend. So thank you very much, brother.